Welcome back. This is Tracy from Technology Support Services. In the last assignment, you learned how to make a simple quiz. If quizzes are going to be something that you use regularly, it would be a good idea to learn how to use question banks. Question banks allow you to reuse questions to maybe have a pre-test and a post-test, or give different versions of the same test to different students. When you made your quiz, the first thing you did was click the plus quiz button and then create your questions in the question section of the quiz builder. There's another way to go about this that lets you organize your questions first and then build your quizzes later. This video assumes you already know how to build questions. To start with the question bank, you click Quizzes, and then instead of clicking the plus quiz button, click the three little dots next to the plus quiz button to choose Manage Question Banks. Now, as you can see here, we already have quite a few questions in our question bank. The problem with them is that they're unfiled. We have 2 quizzes already built in this lesson, and I added a few more questions just to make this video a little more dramatic. But if we click the unfiled questions, we can see all of these different questions that we have, but we don't necessarily know what topic they go with or what quiz even they went with. Now, if I had only just now started and built my first test, what I could do is go back to where it says unfiled questions and then just rename this bank with the name of my quiz. And then when I created a new quiz, it would make another unfiled question bank, and I could just rename that question bank with the new name of the quiz, and that would at least separate out my questions by quiz. There's a couple other ways that we could do this, though. The first one is, instead of ever building the quiz, we start with adding a question bank, and our new question bank is going to be about, let's say it's about the respiratory system. So I made my bank, and now I click into the bank, and I start adding my questions from here. This works exactly like it did when you added your questions to the quiz directly. So I'm going to add a question. Now here's something we probably didn't think about when we were making a simple quiz. I don't know if you noticed, but in the question bank, all of the questions were called question. And this could give you an opportunity to kind of give a sub-label to this question. We know that it's in the respiratory question bank, but maybe now we want to have this one be about lungs. And then make your question. I'm not going to worry about the rest of this right now. Then my next question that I make in the bank might be about veins. Oops, it's Monday. And then my next question might also be about lungs again. You are the only person who can see these labels. So you go ahead and you just write all of the questions you were going to put in your quiz anyway. The difference is, instead of being in a quiz, they're in a bank. And then we can go back to our question banks, and now you can see that we have the respiratory system, and it has 3 questions in it. This one, remember, was actually our untitled question, so these aren't really fit formula questions, but what I can do is go into this bank and say, see how these are all called question? When you have a chance, you could re-edit these, and this one could be, when you're making it, this one was about SMART goals. So in your spare time, you could go in and change these questions. And then when you go to actually build your quiz, you go back to Quizzes, build your new quiz, questions, and instead of adding your new questions here, you find questions. Notice all of the question banks that you own are now visible, and you could actually pick and choose questions out of different banks. In this case, I'm going to go to my Fit Formula bank, and you can select all, or you can just pick a few. Could you see where the labels might be helpful here, so we're not having to read all of the questions? But when you pick what you're going to choose, and then you just go Add Questions, It adds those 3 questions to our quiz. And then if we did a post-test later, we could add different questions. The other thing you can do is create a question group. And in this case, I want to create a question group that has to do with the FIT formula. And I'm going to say pick 5 questions worth 1 point each, and I'm going to link it to a question bank. So I can link it to my FIT formula bank. And then each student is going to get 5 different questions out of that bank. So when I create my group, notice that I can't even see which questions they got. Every student is just going to get 5 different ones. So as you begin to build your banks around certain topics, you can randomize your tests by using groups that are connected to banks. And you can have a quiz, as you can see, that has questions that you choose and questions that are random. So you could put your most important questions on the quiz for sure, and then randomize some other ones that might be of equal value. I know this was kind of a quick overview of question banks, but I hope you can see where the power of those might be. Now there's one more thing that I'd like to show you when it comes to question banks, and that is how you can organize them if you've already gotten into this a little bit and now you have this giant bank of questions, but you'd really like to have them organized. So you click here on the 3 little dots next to the plus quiz to get back to your question banks. Then this bank is the one I need to organize. So I am going to go into this quiz, and then I can move or copy one question into another bank if I want to. So if I wanted to just move this one question into another bank, I click the move and copy, and then maybe my bank already exists, maybe it doesn't. In this case it doesn't, so I'm going to call it activity, and it will create a new bank and move my question into it. Now if I have like lots of questions that I want to move into another bank, you can just click this move multiple and then go choose the different questions that you want to move into a different bank. And then either move it into one of these banks or create a new bank. And that will move all of your questions into a bank called Endurance. So then we can click here and see that the 2 new things I've created, Activity and Endurance, both have the questions I moved into them. So even if you already have a bunch of unlisted questions, it's not too hard to now organize them, just like you would organize a stack of papers on your desk into folders where they would be easier to find. I hope that you find this useful in managing your quizzes, and as usual, please don't hesitate to reach out if you have questions about using question banks with your quizzes.